Okay, now the next item that needs to be done for this exercise is to turn this image into that image. Now in order to do that, there are a couple elements that we need to add. First thing is the shadow. Next thing is the vehicle and the cutout for the vehicle. The next thing is the reflections, and of course the background. Okay, now to get this done, we're going to repeat the same process we did before. We're going to open a new file. So we're going to go to, we're going to actually open the this file here. And that's it. Now when we open this file, the first thing we want to do, just like before, is to change the background layer to a regular layer by right clicking and layer from background. Name the layer, so we want to call this the car layer. Now once that is done, we now need to get rid of the white border. Now we could again use the lasso tool to do that and cut around it and delete. However, if I should zoom in here, you realize that this particular image model has a lot of curves. So using this type of method of cutting, the lasso tool is more an kind of irregular line tool. So this type of lasso tool wouldn't be the most efficient tool to use to cut this out. So if we go back over to our lasso tool and we click and hold, we could change it to the magnetic lasso tool. This one is pretty cool. Now what I need to do is to click anywhere near the surface of the car once. I'm not clicking and holding, I'm just clicking once. I'm just running the cursor along the vehicle. Now notice how Photoshop is detecting those angles already. I'm going to come back around, and when I get the little zero icon, that means a loop has been made. Then I click once. Okay, so I'm going to delete that. And as you can see, the car is beginning to get cut out. So I'm going to do the same thing again, using the magnetic lasso tool. When I get the circle, I press 0 and delete that piece. Now this is basically the same rhythm going all the way around, but this time we're going to take a bigger chunk. So let's try and get all of this one time. Now notice while you do this, you might make errors like that. To correct them, what you can do is use the backspace key, and when you hit backspace you actually go to the previous dot. So I want to use the backspace key and go down to there, and let's continue. I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to hit delete to delete that. So we're basically almost there. We just need to do the bottom. Now to do the bottom, let's use another tool. Instead of the lasso tool, we're actually going to use this one here, which is a magic wand tool. Now I want you to click on it, click and hold, and you notice you can select two types of magic wand tools. So what I want you to select is the one called magic wand, this one. Now with the magic wand, what it does is select all similar colors all at once. So if I click in this white part, it will select all the white pixels. If I try to click in this red part, it would select all the red pixels that are similar to the one I clicked. So we're going to click the white part. I'm going to press delete. So notice this is finally cut out. Okay, now I'm going to use the move tool. Remember, when I choose the move tool, I want to ensure that the options for my move tool, I have this checked, which is show transform controls. Now once I have that checked, I can make this a little smaller by holding shift and going down. Oh, but first I need to confirm. Now let's not forget this option here in Photoshop. Everything that you do in Photoshop, you need to confirm that yes, you indeed want it done. Now you have to confirm before you move on to doing another manipulation or to use another tool. So I'm going to click that yes. I want to make this a little smaller. And notice I have to click yes again. I want to confirm that I want it to be that small. Okay, I'm going to move this up a bit. Now the next thing I want to do, if I look back at my reference image here, let's create the shadow first. Now the shadow is basically a painting of a black mark. So to get that done, we're going to create a new layer. Now in our layer panel, we want to create a new layer. This is not going to be a background layer, but we're going to create a new layer, which is that button there. So once we choose a new layer, this new layer will be our shadow layer. So to rename it, I want to double click the name and call it shadow, and I want to put it below the car. Now once I have the shadow layer there, what I'm going to do now is use this other tool now. This is our brush, and I'm going to actually paint the shadow by choosing a particular color here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my color to black and white. That's what Photoshop has as their default, by clicking this button here. When I click that button, notice my color now changed from black to white. So I want to click it. I want to have the black in front and the white behind. So I'm going to go for my brush tool now, and just like before, once you choose a tool, so I've now selected this tool, it comes up top here and it shows you all of the options that are associated with that tool. Okay, now this might be a little tricky for some people by using the mouse, but essentially what you want to do is, I'm going to go up top here and change the size of my brush by using this icon here. So to change the brush options, we are going to click this down arrow here, and we're going to make the size of it a little smaller, and we'll probably want to increase the softness of it Right, so notice all of these options here are from the brush tool, which is what we selected here. Now when we run this layer and we draw, it is supposed to actually come below the car layer, so let's check that out. Okay, so let us go back and let's make the hardness less. Alright, there we go. So this is on its own layer. Layer on, layer off. And I mean, this is just a rough sketch, but there are some things that you can do to play around with the shadow for those of us who wants it to be a bit more realistic. So for example, I'm going to turn this shadow layer off and I'm going to create a new shadow layer. So I'll call this shadow 2. You could also use the flow options, and I could turn my flow all the way down. So these are all options related to the brush tool, and that gets it to be a bit paler, but in areas that you know would be darker, like where the seat is, where the wheels are, you'd probably want to scrub that a couple times so it becomes dark. But you can also extend this onward, like under here would be dark, so you could probably shade that a couple times, so you get a little bit more natural effect doing it this way, but it's up to you. Okay, next we want to add the background, and to add the background, what we did was use the gradient tool. So to use a gradient tool, so that's a new tool here. The gradient tool is actually a secondary tool, and that is located secondarily to this tool here. So I can click and hold and I will get the gradient tool. Now, just like before, once you select a tool, this is important for you to remember, once you select a tool, it comes up the top and then shows you the options for those tools. So I selected the gradient tool. These are the options for the gradient tool. So for example, I could select maybe a sample, so maybe I could select maybe black and white, and the type of gradient is a linear gradient. I could also change that to a circular gradient and so forth, but linear gradient is pretty okay for now. So what we want to do is, we've selected this black to white, but we want to actually fade it from deep red to a lighter red. So to do that, you're going to click here, and then notice this is saying that the color on the far left of the gradient is this color and the far right is that color. So in order to change the color of the gradient, we need to change black to maybe perhaps a red, maybe a darker tone red like that. So choose OK, and we want the color on the right to remain like a kind of orangey color like that. Choose OK. Now to use the gradient tool might seem a bit tricky at first. So in using the gradient tool, what this tool actually looks like is a line. Now if I drag a line from left to right, on the gradient panel layer, so I want to create a new layer and I want to call that gradient. So when I'm on a gradient layer, which is behind the car layer, so it will be behind, and I drag from left to right, notice that Photoshop actually blends between the reddest red and the whitest white, and we'll just blend between them. Now the direction is important, so if I draw the arrow down, then it blends it in accordance to the angle that I've drawn. So what I want to do is do a vertical one like that, maybe down a little more, maybe down lower. Yeah, I think that's okay. But notice something, where is our shadow? So the shadow layer is actually behind the gradient layer, so I want to change that by putting the gradient layer behind. Now the final element to add would be the reflection. So to add the reflection, well, the first thing we need to do is to copy the vehicle. So we're going to make a copy, a mirrored copy. And to copy in Photoshop, remember you can select the object. You can just hold Alt, go on the move tool, hold Alt, and then try to move the object, and you will automatically create two. So after you create two, what I want you to do is to squash it so much that it stretches on the other side. And then you want to angle this so that the wheels will somewhat touch. Now you might notice that this area looks a little funny, and to combat that, we're going to use another feature in Photoshop. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to choose Warp. So that feature we're going to use is under Edit, and then you're going to go to Transform, Edit, Transform, and we're going to go to Warp. Now what the warp allows us to do is to actually move this grid, and what I want you guys to do is to angle this so that it looks like a shadow. Now once you get all the wheels touching, then you're pretty much on the right track. And once you get that done, you're going to choose OK. Now for this layer, right, we're going to call it car reflection. We definitely want to put this layer behind the car layer. So the car layer is still on top, the car reflection is below. We're going to now change the opacity of this layer. So with the layer selected, the layer called car reflection, we're going to change the opacity here to make it a little bit more transparent. So to do that, we're going to click this here and change the opacity. So now you can kind of see the reflection with the vehicle. And we're going to distort it a bit. So we're going to learn about filter effects. So we're going to use a filter effect to get the reflection to not be so refined and perfect as if the building was on a polished floor. We want to get it a bit hazy and random. So to do that, make sure that you're on the car reflection layer. You're going to go to filter, and we're going to add a blur. And what we're going to add is a motion blur. So that is filter, blur, and motion blur. We're going to increase the distort amount, but we want to run the motion blur vertical. There we go. We can probably do it a bit more, choose OK, and there we have it. So we've learned how to cut something out. We've learned how to create shadows, very simple shadows, and we've also learned how to do reflections, and we've went into a little bit of creating shadows from the brush tool. Alright, so this concludes our tutorial on exercise 1.